Hello and welcome to One North Stories. Today we are continuing our A-Star alumni interview series. And today we have Eugene Wee. Welcome to One North Stories.
Well, thank you, Ruben. Good to be back.
Okay, so we want to talk a little bit, about your journey through A-Star and then kind of the impacts it's had, and then also like your technology journey, beyond A-Star as well, now that you're at ST Engineering. So maybe to start out, when I say A-Star, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you besides, grades?
First thing that comes to mind, I think of three things, three T words, if you will. First of all is talent. I think it undergirds everything that we do at A-Star. Next is technology. I think that's a consequence of the work that our talent is involved in. And the third T, it's a bit generous to call it a T word, but I would say transfer. So knowledge transfer, technology transfer is what I spent the vast majority of my career at A-Star involved in. So that's something that's certainly quite close to my heart.
Yes.
And I think, that about sums it up.
Okay, so talent, technology, and then what do we do with the technology? We transfer it.
Yeah,
We got to get it into the applications, into the companies.
that's right.
Okay.
And so I think that pretty much mirrors my journey in A-Star as well. So I guess as a good segue into what I've done at my time at A-Star, maybe that might be interesting to pick on a little bit. But I started my career as a consultant. So fresh out of school, I joined IBM. Then I went to a consultancy called IDC, which really focused on the market readiness of technologies. So my first engagement with A-Star was really as a consultant, right? They wanted me to look at I2R's portfolio of technologies. And well, I shan't mention any names, but at that point in time, I had said that some of the technologies that were coming out of our laboratories weren't ready for commercialization. They disagreed with me. And the next thing they did after that was they hired me. So I was brought on board full-time as a consultant to look at the portfolio of digital technologies that were coming out of I2R, IHPC. And we were looking at evaluating them for technology readiness. I spent a good 9 months, almost a year, looking at these technologies. And I think we were in a transitionary period at A-Star. So I moved from what was then known as exploit technologies. I think you might have heard of that in the archives somewhere. And I joined the Policy and Planning Division at A-Star. The director of Policy and Planning then was Raj Tampuran, another name that you might have heard of.
No, from the archives, yes. Well, when I joined, he was at IHPC a long time ago.
Okay, yeah. So interesting factoid. So he actually had parallel roles. He was the executive director of IHPC and the director of planning and policy at A-Star HQ at that juncture. And he brought me on board to help run the research and statistics unit. So that really charts my entry into A-Star, where I've spent, well, I'd like to think 14 good years.
Okay. So you would have joined 2010-ish, just before?
Just before.
Okay.
So I joined as a consultant in 2008, and then in 2009-ish, I transitioned into the policy and planning role.
Okay. Just curious, let's say, before your consultancy company got the contract for this, what did you think of A-Star, or was it on your radar just as a working professional, someone interested in technology?
Ooh, okay, so at that point in time, again, if you look back at the archives, there were a few controversial issues that had come about in that time, largely around scholars. So my first T, talent, I think some of the news at that time also shaped my impressions about A-Star. I think there was many controversies about scholars and how we felt, or how the organization at that point felt that it was important for scholars to come back and pay their dues. So I think that was the first impression of A-Star
Okay.
that stuck, and that there were clearly a lot of incredibly talented individuals, but also, well, again, I think this may segue into my evolution in my career at A-Star, because one of the things that I did after policy and planning was organizational development. So happy to share a little bit more about that as well.
Okay, please, let's then fast forward back to
Yeah.
your journey through the different units here.
Sure. So organizational development was interesting because effectively, together with, then it was Chairman Lim Chuan Po, and Raj Tampuran had then become the managing director of A-Star. And they felt that there was a disconnect between the, I don't want to say behaviors, but how talent at A-Star, how they were thinking about where they were in the organization and how we could drive organizational alignment a little bit more. So I think back then, in the early 2010s, if you asked a researcher from IMCB or Simtech who they worked for, chances are they'd say, I work for Simtech.
Yes.
Or I work for IMCB.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things that we wanted to do as an organization was to drive this, for want of a better word, spirit of there being a one A-Star, right? So I think one of the things that we tried to do was really inculcate through various programs, through engagement sessions with all of our researchers, to really share with them what A-Star really was all about, right? Not just about the research that they were doing, but how, as an organization, as an agency under the Ministry of Trade and Industry, that their responsibility wasn't only to focus on research, but also to look at the economic outcomes, which again goes back to my original point on from talent to technology transfer, I think is the key theme of this podcast.
Yeah. Okay, so then what comes next after this? Because I kind of, when I started intersecting with you in the organization, or my first memory of you is at an event, none of what you've described already, is starting a unit or maybe pitching a unit on startups.
Yes. So after I had done, I guess, the corporate activities, so policy and planning, organizational development, I think all very corporate A-Star, the next role I embarked on was with ETPL. So ETPL, I think the acronym for which is Exploit Technologies Private Limited, was an evolution of the organization which I had first encountered.
Yes.
So I was first engaged as a consultant by Exploit Technologies. During my time in corporate, they evolved under the leadership of Philip Lim. It became ETPL, as they preferred to be known. And I joined them in more of a planning role. So mine was a role which saw us interface between the research community, the innovation and enterprise community, and industry. And so my first job at ETPL was to look at rebranding. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but we actually spent almost a year looking at what was doing well with the ETPL or the Exploit Technologies brand name and how we could potentially improve on that. And so that saw us transition from ETPL, i.e. the exploitation of technologies. So it's important to use the words exploit and technologies in the same sentence, because I think exploit in and of itself doesn't bring about the most pleasant of sensations.
Yes.
As you can imagine. So we transitioned to accelerate technologies. So we went through an entire exercise of rebranding. We looked at various possibilities. We landed on the full name, the full legal name was a change from Exploit Technologies to Accelerate Technologies. But in terms of a brand name, we just use accelerate. So it's A with a star and accelerate. And I thought that was a nice play on words, but more importantly, it also tied it in to the whole A-star family a little bit more closer. I think that built on my experience with organizational development also. And
Okay.
what I wanted to make sure was the innovation and enterprise side of A-star was not neglected from the whole A-star family. So we wanted to tie in our identity as well. I think the logo certainly was one way to do that.
So just curious, I mean, we love acronyms. Accelerate's not an acronym for anything behind the scenes.
It's not. I could spell out several words that begin with A, C, C, E, L, but I shan't.
Okay. Okay, so accelerate rebranding.
So accelerate rebranding. After we were through with that, I was entrusted with this idea that we needed to seed, grow, and internationalize spin-offs here at A-Star. So I think one of the bona fide ways of transferring technology from the laboratories out into the marketplace. We, of course, have several ways to do this at A-Star, right? There's
Yes.
the engagements with your multinational companies. It's about proliferating the technologies amongst the small and medium enterprises. But also one of the ways that, or at least what I was tasked to do was look at startups and spin-offs and how we could potentially license these technologies into new companies. And so there were a couple of things that we were doing in parallel. We started an incubator, A-Start Central, which I think you're pretty familiar with.
Yes. Yeah. One of our favorite places here at the One North campus.
It is. So I think if you negate all my contributions at A-Star, it would be ensuring that there's always fantastic coffee and other beverages flowing at A-Start Central. So I think that's my number one contribution to A-Star, if anyone's keeping count. So we did that. We started an incubator that allowed startups to not only incubate their technologies, but also interact with one another, with founders that we were bringing in, with investors that we were bringing in, with experts in, well, all kinds of corporate affairs that could potentially help them make their startup a success. So that was one of the things that we were responsible for driving. We also had a separate arm that dealt with investments and the equities that we held in the startups. And we also initiated programs that allowed us to seed this idea of becoming a technopreneur with our researchers. So that's some of the stuff I did all the way up till a couple of years ago, when I went from the sell side of technology to the buy side.
Okay, so very storied half career through A-Star. Let's say still youngish. Youngish. And so through the different corporate functions of A-Star, and then back to the technology and getting technology out through startups as kind of the main vehicle through A-Start Central and beyond. So how did that, let's say you then left and you're now at ST Engineering, like you said, on the technology buy side. How did your experiences here, maybe from the corporate side as well as, let's say, the startup side, prepare you for what you're doing now or influence what you're doing now?
Oh, I would say that my transition into the technology buy side was actually pretty seamless. So what I do today at ST Engineering, and I'm with the Group Technology Office, is really look upstream at technologies that we can acquire or build together with our partners in universities and research institutes to see how we can either A, create new products or services, B, improve our existing offerings at ST Engineering, or C, look at how we can use technologies to improve processes across our various business units. So I think looking at it from the sell side while I was here at A-Star really made the transition seamless. when I went over to the buy side or the technology acquisition side, because I joined armed knowing full well the difficulties that organizations such as A-Star had in engaging companies. So I think even in the short 2.5 years that I've been with ST Engineering, I've had quite if I dare say, a few successful engagements with organizations such as A-Star to ensure that there was a seamless transfer of technologies from the lab through to where we were able to productize them.
Okay. So just curious, like in your technology buy role, I mean, ST Engineering is a Singapore company, but at the same time it's a global company. Do you look across the globe in your buying engagements, or is it kind of like a Singapore or Southeast Asia first? If you can't find it, then elsewhere.
Ooh, I would say that my role has allowed me to travel the globe to look at different technologies. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Boston and Cambridge and the East Coast in the US to engage a couple of universities, a couple of startups to look at potential areas that we can work together. But one of the things that I find myself doing, and maybe it's just me being guilty of this, but two things happen. First of which, I always look at whether or not some of this is already available in Singapore. Not because I think of it in terms of Singapore first, but I do think of it in practical terms, right? Am I able to engage the researchers on a constant basis? Am I able to engage in negotiations at a time that's friendly to me?
Yeah.
So there are all these practical considerations when you look at technology transfer. And having a researcher that's 10, 20,000 miles away just makes it that much more difficult to engage in technology transfer. And I think that, well, one of the lucky coincidences that we found is that because A-Star has a reach that actually is quite global.
Yeah.
So if you look at the A-Star Global Network, as the name suggests, we do have alumni all across the globe. And as with some of the engagements that I had in the US, I found that there were collaborators in Singapore, certainly in A-Star, that could potentially help me make this technology transfer journey just a little bit easier. So to answer your question, yes, I do look globally, but I also do keep Singapore in mind when it comes to how I can accelerate technology
So
transfer.
like it's like a conduit, right? Or
Oh,
so you're
absolutely.
using A-Star researchers, RIs or university
Yep,
professors and teams as a conduit, global funnel, Singapore, ST.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So I think I've been blessed in my engagements, having, I would say, a good number of relationships with A-Star researchers that I've built over the years has really allowed me to compound my networks globally.
Okay. So for maybe people like thinking about A-Star or people in A-Star as an employment option, as a career growth option or career planning, like you've now left. You've been gone a couple of years. How was it a difficult transition to leave? I mean, you kind of said like on the work side it wasn't. It was quite natural. But did you feel like a need to go out of A-Star and try something else?
Ooh. Did I feel the need to leave? That's your question.
There were multiple questions there. I mean, ultimately, yes, my question could be twofold. One, did you want to go back to industry, back to companies where it's maybe 100% market driven as opposed to, in this in between where we are in A-Star? And then B, how did your experience in A-Star help with that transition?
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. I think if the question was there something that compelled me to go back to industry, I would say that I think I had amassed a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge at A-Star. Did I feel compelled to leave? I would say no. I would say that my response would be that I think ST Engineering offered me a role which was maybe slightly different. So I explained how I moved from the sell side of technologies,
Yeah.
i.e., we tried to proliferate technologies to companies, to in my current role at ST Engineering, what I'm doing is being on the receiving end of these technologies. So I would say that the transition was seamless, but more importantly, I think it allowed me to grow. It allowed me to expand my perspectives on technologies. And I think being so much closer to the applications of these technologies is something that I've always been interested in looking at.
Yeah.
So I think it was very much more of a pull for me than a push. Now, to your earlier question on advice to people who are either in A-Star or looking to join A-Star, I would say that one of the things that I've benefited from having, in your words, a storied career at A-Star is that it's given me an incredible amount of breadth of knowledge. And I think that's available to people in A-Star, right? You've got a multitude of research institutions. Beyond just doing research, there's also the layers of managing the research, which can be a career in and of itself. There is the public service layer at A-Star, which gives you exposure to the various ministries and the work of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, which I've had the benefit of learning from. And I think all of this lends to, I guess, being able to look at technology beyond just a single lens of looking at research for research's sake. So I think if you're an A-Star or looking to join A-Star, this is definitely something that you should embrace.
Okay, thanks. So maybe shifting a little bit away from the day job, what would you say influences you, either from a science technology perspective or, let's say, general life perspective? Either we could talk about people, books, other resources. Where's your go-to for that?
So let's start with what's on my nightstand.
Besides an iPhone charger.
Besides, besides a phone charger, I've got a couple of books on my nightstand now, mostly biographies, autobiographies, musings from politicians of the past. On my nightstand right now, I've got George Yo's musings. I've also got a book by Ho Kwon Ping. And let's see. Okay, so those are the two books that have bookmarks on my
Okay.
nightstand.
Physical books.
Physical books, yes. You will notice I've also got an ebook reader from which I borrow plenty of books from the library. And I was reading this fairly interesting cultural medallion book that's called Durians Are Not the Only Fruit, just to add variety to the stuff that I'm reading. I've also got Daniel Pink's Drive, which is at 12%. But yeah, I'm not sure if I'd classify them as my inspirations per se, but it's definitely not what's keeping me up at night either, because it's sometimes these are things that are lulling me
Lulling
to
you to
sleep.
sleep, yeah. So you're still very much into reading as opposed to the audiobooks or the
I
stuff.
try. I do listen to podcasts on my commute, and this is where you can shamelessly pitch One North Stories is. Something that's on my listening list as well.
Okay. And any other science, tech, or business podcasts that you...
Ooh, business podcasts. I love The Economist. I've got this ritual with my daughter. So every morning on the commute to school, I let her listen to the music of her choice for a good majority of the journey. But once we turn off the expressway, she knows to turn on the FT News podcast.
Other news too. Okay.
Yeah, so that's our ritual every morning. Once we turn off the expressway, she switches on to the news podcast, which allows her to listen to maybe the first 5-6 minutes of the news before she gets off at school.
Okay, so the current events of the day, or
It is, I mean, or at least I try to impress on her that it's important. Although in these tumultuous times, I'm not so sure myself.
yeah, it's changing, but I mean, it's still current events are important. Okay, as we wrap up, anything else you want to share, either about your times pre-A-Star, at A-Star, post-A-Star, or we can just tell our audience where to find you.
Oh, well, look me up on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to be connected to a wider group of talent, technology transfer professionals, or people who are responsible for generating good technologies.
Okay, and just what's top of mind for you in terms of your technology buy? At ST. Sorry, I slipped one last one in.
You slipped that last one in, and we've been talking about this. So immediately after this podcast, one of the engagements that I have is on fusion. And I think this is going to be one of the most exciting technologies that I anticipate will change the world that we live in, hopefully in my lifetime. And so the technologies around that, I think, are all incredibly exciting. And I'm looking forward to seeing what A-Star, the global research community, can potentially offer in terms of transforming the energy landscape across the globe.
Okay, I think we can leave it at that. Thanks, Eugene.
Thank you.